You have to play quarterback to win this award. Going back, the outlier is Adrian Peterson in 2012. Brady, 07, 10, 17. Manning, 08, 09, 13. Rodgers, 11, 20, and 21. Mahomes, 18 and 22. Cam Newton, 2015. Matt Ryan, 2016. Lamar's won it a couple times. So you have to play quarterback to win this award. A couple guys making the case here, and I think you're going to make a bet on Goff when I read this. So we have a Super Bowl contender and a team that blew it last year in the NFC title game, but a sexy team, and everyone is hot on the Detroit Lions, and rightfully so. A good quarterback who's going to put up big numbers with a great game plan and offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson. Matt Brown and Adam Burke making the case for Goff at 40-1. Matt Brown writes, Goff was better last year than most people realize. Second in passing yards, fourth in touchdowns, third in passing yards per game, fifth in completion percentage, fifth graded passer in the NFL by Pro Football Focus. Why isn't he going to put up numbers again? I think he's going to repeat a lot of those numbers because he plays 14 of his 17 games in a dome this season. One road game, late December, probably guaranteed to be playing bad weather at Soldier Field. Otherwise, it's Lambeau in early November and a trip to Santa Clara December 30th. Adam Burke writes, the stage is set for Goff to be able to have a monster season based on venue and timing. He had a 48-10 touchdown INT ratio in dome venues over the last two seasons, with Goff and Ben Johnson running it back for the third year in a row. With the potential this offense has in a favorable schedule, and you have to play quarterback to win this division, they recommend Goff 40-1 to win the MVP. I think that's a good breakdown and a good write-up, and a team that should win a lot of games, and a lot of people picking them to win their division too.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a shot at those odds, and that's excellent analysis breaking it down. I think the one point I would make and probably emphasize, even though you mentioned it there, was offensive coordinator Ben Johnson's back, and that's a big thing when you got your OC back after a big season like this. He reportedly had a chance to leave for a head coaching job, maybe with the Commanders, but he's stuck in Detroit, and that continuity with the offense is going to be big for Jared Goff. So I think that's a point to emphasize as well. And a 40-1, why not? It's worth a shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing you mentioned before a break too, though, and I have the Bears under, but I did take 2 player props with the over. And I had Garrett Wilson last year to have a big year.
Yeah.
But I know Connor Hughes is big on this, and he writes about it. If one thing goes wrong and you have an over, you're cooked.
Yeah.
And there are 4 or 5 different things that can happen to you that'll take out your over. Injury to not only that player, but an injury to someone else or a key member of the team like Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. You could have a coach get fired. You could mess with someone's workload. I mean, there's so much that goes on there. And that's a great point you made before break about you're up against it if you bet anything over because of that factor that one thing goes wrong, you're cooked.
That's typically why most pros are betting under on a lot of those. But it's especially in football where injury is going to be more of a factor than in other sports. And I don't bet a lot of player props over for the season because of that. And think about all the people who bet the Jets futures last year, win the division, win the AFC, win the Super Bowl, over the win total, everything on and on and on. Yep. And 5 minutes into the season, your bet's shot.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's one thing you always have to think when you're going to make a futures bet or make any bet in general. You have to sit back and say, okay, how could I lose this bet? What could go wrong? And in football, what could go wrong in injuries typically going to be your first answer.
Everyone picked either Green Bay or Detroit to win the NFC North. As I mentioned, 17 of 20 picked the Eagles to win the East. 19 of 20 picked the Niners to win the division and the Chiefs to win the division. 19 of 20 have either Baltimore or the Bengals to win the AFC North. Mike Somich stepped out and took the Browns. And I know we talked to Tony Rizzo yesterday. He thinks Watson can have a big year. Well, I hope so. I mean, that's the other thing that concerned me about.
I got to see it to believe it.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Well, how about the biggest thing was how other than the Baltimore game, how the offense and the passing attack struggled. He goes out, you get Flacco off the street, all of a sudden it's Njoku here and Cooper here, and the week in, week out numbers that Cooper was putting up. Yeah. And suddenly they come out right away against the Rams. They had just signed Flacco. They're going shotgun, throwing the ball all over the place. Mm-hmm. Like, where was that with Watson? And then, which I can't stand, and Rizzo's right, though, they didn't want to hear it from the fan base in one entry. They got rid of Flacco, who's now with the Colts. So you got Winston and Huntley backing up Watson, so there's no controversy, which, the guy has rabbit ears. That's incredible to me.
Well, also, how much gas does Joe Flacco have left in the tank at this point, right? And he played pretty poorly in the playoff game as well.
Yeah.
So I think...
But the defense certainly, for whatever reason, was awful on the road. There was a pick six in there early, but he did not play well, you're right.
And here's another thing about the Browns, and Kevin Stefanski was getting a lot of Coach of the Year love last year because of what happened with the offense at the end and the turnaround. Okay, so if Stefanski was the biggest factor in the Browns, where was the offense? Where was the offensive production and explosiveness when Deshaun Watson was a quarterback? So I'm saying it was not Stefanski who turned the Browns around. It was Flacco who walked in off the street and made everything work. It was not the coach. Mm-hmm. They're going to miss Flacco.
Yeah, yep. As I mentioned, all the Miami love. 10 people picked the Dolphins to win the division as well.
That's the strangest thing to me. I'm not a Dolphins guy. I'm not buying into Tua, and I'm not buying into that defense without Vic Fangio as coordinator. And the Dolphins lost some key personnel in the offseason as well. So that's one I'm not buying. I think it's Bills or Jets in the AFC East.
I took the Jets. I agree with Will Hill. He recommended it on a future bet as well. I'm concerned about the coaching staff, but again, all the moves they made in the offseason, and the Jets went 7-10 with that atrocious quarterback play. So now I have Aaron Rodgers, and I add Williams, and I get a healthy Breece Hall, and the bromance and the chemistry that he has with Wilson. People don't realize how good that guy is. And how good Wilson and I think he puts up 1,600 yards. He can have double-digit touchdowns. And I have Mike Williams on the other side, too. So, and I also like Rodgers with something to prove. We'll get to win totals coming up later on. So, Mackinnon has a good article and breakdown on retread coaches. We have 7 new coaches. You look at the retread coaches, Raheem Morris, Harbaugh, and Dan Quinn. It hasn't gone well. And his breakdown, the records for the retread head coaches over the last decade in their first full regular seasons are 153 and 243 straight up and 44% ATS. As favorites since 2013, they are 32% ATS. A lot of fade potential here. Mm-hmm. I can't believe they hired Raheem Morris. I cannot believe they're not the only organization. But they talked to Belichick. They didn't decide to go to Belichick. They go with Morris. I'm not a fan of Dan Quinn. This could be Riverboat Ron all over again, where you go with a retread and it's a disaster and doesn't work out, and they were so bad defensively. I agree with you with Harbaugh. He wins everywhere he's been. But maybe it takes time, but you're right about the schedule. He went 44-19-1 with San Francisco, and there's certainly a lot of talent with the Chargers. But I'm not a Morris fan, but certainly that division is up for grabs. Yeah. But Atlanta averaged 18 points per game last year, and now I have Cousins. So I have one of the easiest schedules. Mm-hmm. I have a big upgrade at quarterback with what they had with Heineke and Ritter. I couldn't believe that.
Sometimes a quarterback situation can override a clumsy head coaching situation.
Sure, yeah, right.
That was a situation for years with the Packers, really. And Aaron Rodgers was so good, it made up for Mike McCarthy being a bumbling buffoon.